Joining me right now is Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe. He is a member of the House Homeland Security Committee. He also sits on the Judiciary Committee and serves as chairman of the Cybersecurity Committee. He's a former federal prosecutor. Congressman, always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
Your reaction to all of this. Let me start off with those pipe bombs that, of course, we are going to hear from the suspect tomorrow in court, and really this tone that we are seeing and political discourse.
Well, I think the main story shouldn't be the political discourse. It should be appreciation and admiration for our law enforcement community. I mean, think about it.
Yes.
In a matter of days, our law enforcement community, our bomb technicians, our forensic experts were able to find the one person out of a population of 320 million people that was a would-be terrorist. So I think it's pretty extraordinary and remarkable, and they certainly deserve our praise. You know, I understand people want to always make everything political and turn it into political discourse. Look, there's been rhetoric on both sides. I know that obviously Mr. Soyak here was targeting Democrats. But, you know, we've seen it the other way. It was a Bernie Sanders supporter that shot my friend Steve Scalise last year. At the end of the day, I don't think it's political rhetoric. It's mental illness that is causing these tragedies or would-be tragedies. We've got a mental health crisis in this country.
Yes, we do. You're right. Well, we'll watch the developments there. I want to get your take on the caravan. They have taken a break right now, have gotten off of the bus, but are continuing their goal to come to the U.S. southern border in the United States. And the president continues to say, look, now is the time to get back in and turn around because you will not be let into this country. As the congressman from a border state of Texas, your thoughts on how to deal with this caravan and now another caravan?
Well, as a nation of immigrants, we want to be as generous and compassionate as possible, and we are. We let 1 million immigrants into this country legally every year. That's more than any other country in the world. But to ignore a horde of folks that from unknown origins with unknown intentions other than to come into this country illegally is just plain reckless. I mean, the role of the federal government, while we have one, Maria, is in part to provide for the common defense, and that means securing the sovereignty and integrity of our territorial borders. Now, presidents have paid lip service to that in the past. It's nice, and I think you know, President Trump deserves credit for demonstrating that he really intends to enforce our borders and to enforce the rule of law. So I commend him for that, and I support him.
I mean, the issue is that once they do get here, there's catch and release. So they can come in and then get a court date to come back, and oftentimes they don't come back. So then they're just here illegally.
Yeah, you asked about the impact, Maria. I mean, it's profound in any number of ways, particularly to constituents of mine in Texas, where a lot of these folks will come through. You know, there's an economic cost, the burden on our healthcare system, on our hospitals, on our schools. That's profound, but there's often a far more personal impact. You know, I have a family of constituents that lost 3 members to an illegal alien that had previously been deported. Kate Steinley's in San Francisco, Molly Tibbetts in Iowa. Unfortunately, almost every week we see an example that in this population of people that would come here are folks that have a history of gun, gang, drug, and violent crime histories that sometimes have a profound impact in a personal way on Americans.
Yeah, it's really important for you to assess the impact because, you know, oftentimes people will say, look, America is a country of immigrants, and we are. And as you say, that is why that we let in legally the number of people that we do. But there is an economic cost to this. And when you do have others coming in and taking the jobs and taking the resources of the people that have already been here, our American citizens have, in many cases, gone through the structure to get in legally. You're taking those resources away from them. The president was at a rally last night in Illinois. He discussed border security in the caravan as part of his campaign. Listen to this.
And you know the military is going to the border. You do know. And I want the people of the caravan to come into our country, but they have to come in legally, like all of the millions of people that are waiting online right now. They can't break into our borders. They're not going to. You're going to see, we called in the military, oh, they're ready. And I wish I could just tell them, and I say it, caravan, turn around, you're not coming in,
So, Congressman, tell us the role of the military. The president has sent military troops there. What specifically will the military be doing?
Well, they'll support law enforcement. This is not a deal where the troops go there for a military confrontation. They're not authorized to do that. They have to have authorization from Congress before they could engage in that. What the president's talking about is sending troops in support of our law enforcement to support our immigration laws at the border. So it'll be a supporting role. But I think that clip again demonstrates that the president is sending a message, obviously, to the folks in the caravan that would come to this country illegally. But I think maybe just as importantly, sending a message to the Central American governments that in some cases are encouraging this and have been encouraging this. Very clearly, I think this is one of the reasons that candidate Trump became President Trump, because he promised to secure our borders, and he's making good on that promise.
Yes.
And I support him. Congressman,
this week you interviewed George Papadopoulos. I want to ask you about this and get a status check on where your investigation stands, looking into the FBI and DOJ's handling of this Trump-Russia investigation. We want to know about George Papadopoulos because this is one of the early individuals that the DOJ and the FBI said was the trigger for them to launch an investigation of collusion between Trump and Russia, correct?
Correct, yeah. And unfortunately, we learned, Maria, this week that the Obama FBI and Justice Department opened up this investigation into whether the Russian government was colluding with the Trump campaign centered around George Papadopoulos, a 28-year-old policy advisor who to this day has never been to Russia and to this day has never knowingly had a conversation with anyone in the Russian government. Maria, the person that bags your groceries at the supermarket has the same number of contacts with Russia and the Russian government as Mr. Papadopoulos, which is 0. One of the troubling things that came out of my questioning is why, if I have seen classified documents that lend support to Mr. Papadopoulos' contention that he had no knowledge or intent to collude with the Russians or anyone on the Trump campaign having that, why he hasn't seen those documents, or why his lawyers haven't seen those documents, or why the judges at the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court haven't seen those documents. So the more people we talk to, the more troubling it is, but it's really the same old story. There's no collusion. There never was collusion. And so that's why we need to talk to folks like Rod Rosenstein to get better answers to what he knows about what the FBI and the Department of Justice were doing back then.
So just to close the loop on Papadopoulos, in other words, there was information, there was certain evidence that would refute claims that there was any interaction between the Trump campaign and Russia, but that information was not given to the FISA court when they went to get the warrant to wiretap American citizens.
So that's my opinion of the classified documents that I have seen. It's evidence that would be favorable to Mr. Papadopoulos' claim and assertion with regard to that. And, the government would have an obligation to turn that over to Mr. Papadopoulos and his lawyers under what's called the Brady Rule. It appears that did not take place, and I think that's one of the reasons that Mr. Papadopoulos has been public in the recent days talking about moving to withdraw his guilty plea.
Right. He said he may withdraw a guilty plea from the Mueller agreement over misconduct at the DOJ.
Yeah, so he'd have to move to withdraw and convince the court that there is a basis to throw out his plea agreement, which is, again, based on lying to the FBI. But if the government didn't meet its obligations in turning over all evidence that it had that was favorable to his case, then he certainly can make that argument. But setting that issue aside, right, really what's more troubling is, is how all of this started and why it continued for such a long period of time and why it has consumed the public debate, when very clearly folks like George Papadopoulos and Carter Page have little or no connections with anything Russian. But this has been allowed again to go on for such a for a 2-year period of time.
Well, we thought you would have an opportunity to talk to Rod Rosenstein about all of this, but the meeting was postponed. Paul Ryan didn't want it to move forward. What can you tell us about why that meeting was postponed?
Well, I wasn't in the conversation directly as to why it was postponed. I can tell you one of the reasons was that the Deputy Attorney General was under the impression that it was going to be about a 30-minute interview of his knowledge of this alleged conversation about wearing a wire to record the president pursuant to the 25th Amendment. When he found out that our intention was to ask him details about the Comey firing, his role in that, the aftermath of that, the appointment of special counsel, the scope of special counsel, his role in the FISA process and potential abuses of the FISA process, he wanted a little bit more time. And, hopefully justice delayed is not justice denied. He has agreed to come back. I think he'll spend a full day with hopefully the Judiciary Committee. That's certainly my hope and intention.
So when would you expect him to come back? And is that a public hearing when he'll come back?
Again, it'll be up to the chairman to make those decisions in terms of the format. But I think a lot of folks were unhappy that it was going to be so limited in terms of who was going to get access to asking questions.
Right.
That I think that this is more likely going to be a public hearing where more members of Congress will be able to ask some of the questions that I just raised directly to the Deputy Attorney General.
And we should expect that after the midterm, sometime in November, you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's likely to happen in the next week before the midterms,
Right.
but I know that, hopefully the sooner the better.
So we had Lindsey Graham on the program last weekend, and basically I asked him what I would like to ask you, and that is what happens to this investigation should the House flip and go to Democrat control. Here's what Lindsey Graham said to me last week in terms of the Senate. Watch this, Congressman.
Well, the House promises to impeach the president and Kavanaugh. I think Republicans continue to try to hold the FBI and Department of Justice accountable for abuse of power. If I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee next year, we hold the Senate, I promise you we're going to find out about the Simpson Fusion GPS problem. I promise you we're going to get to the bottom of how they used a dossier prepared by a foreign agent paid for by the Democratic Party to get a warrant against an American citizen. We're not going to turn our back on this. If I'm chairman, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And the only way for me to be chairman is for us to hold the Senate.
So, Congressman, I mean, this feels like the biggest scandal of our time. Are the American people going to understand what took place here? And what are the prospects for the midterm elections? Do you have a plan B in terms of keeping this investigation going?
Well, I will tell you, Maria, I feel really good a week out from the midterms. I think a lot of what Senator Graham was just saying will come to fruition. There is no blue wave in the Senate. We're going to keep the Senate, and in fact, we're going to pick up seats in the Senate, at least one, hopefully 2 or 3. And the bigger the margin, the better it will be for not just investigations, but confirmation hearings, being able to avoid spectacles like we had with Justice Kavanaugh. So I fully anticipate that it will be chairman. He will be the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and we'll be able to continue this investigation. The House is going to be tight. History is against us, Maria, but there are things that are working for us. One of those is a president who is out on a daily basis working his tail off to help Republicans in tough races. The other thing that's working for us, Maria, is I think it's being crystallized in these last few weeks, the choice that Americans have between Republicans and Democrats. I mean, the Kavanaugh hearing demonstrated that Democrats believe in a standard of guilty until proven innocent. And, with respect to this caravan, you still have Democrats out there saying that we should abolish Immigration Customs Enforcement, the agency that supports and enforces our immigration laws. I mean,
Right.
I hate to use the word stupid, Maria, but I can't think of a better word. And you know, sometimes you can't fix stupid, but you can vote it out of office.
There you go. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
You bet. Thanks,
Congressman
Maria.
John Ratcliffe joining us there.